Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. I want to thank Britannic, firstly, for the opportunity to be here. I'm going to talk about Five9, my role. And actually, I've been at Five9 for 7 years. And 7 years ago, Five9 really didn't have much of a brand here in the UK. So I want to talk a little bit about a lot of what you heard today, how AI is revolutionizing the contact center. But one of the first things I want to address is I was actually one of the first few employees here in the UK for Five9. And we had such a lack of brand awareness. God bless her soul. My gran kept on asking for burger discounts. And I couldn't understand why at first. And I then explained that it's not Five Guys, Nan. It's Five9. And Five9 do multi-tenant software, it's cloud, and you don't understand. And by the end of it, I said, has anyone got Uber Eats on them? I'm just going to order some burger for her. And you end up trying to explain even what the contact center is as a job. It's hard. And where's Zoom? I sometimes ended up just saying, it's Zoom for the contact center. This is way back when Zoom didn't have a contact center offering. Because in the pandemic, Zoom became a brand that is a verb. So it's a lot easier to explain what a remote contact center meant to the market. I'm now going to talk a little, it's a salesy side, so just bear with me. It's a little bit about who we are, and we've been in this industry for 20 years, Five9. And the box I want to focus on really isn't the fact that we've been here 20 years, it's the box that says 86 plus Net Promoter Score. It's a little salesy, but it's something that we're quite proud of. And the reason why is because that's a big decision that enterprise or the customer is about to make when they move from a legacy to a cloud or whatever vendor they're about to choose. And therefore, the reason we point to this stat as a vendor is because essentially, as a lot of you here probably are familiar with, the Net Promoter Score is articulating, well, what is promised in the sales cycle was delivered during deployment. And thus saith the customer. So it's a powerful data point, if you like, a proof point as to all the promises made in a sales cycle that actually is being utilized. And these are some of our top brands. I don't have the brands logos, but the team, Jason and Gemma and Steve over there at the stand, and we don't mind sharing with you some of the customers that you see here, 3,000 odd plus customers. And now we've grown, by the way. So even though I was employee number 3 or 4 here in the UK, there's 1,000 now outside of the US and 3,000 globally. You've got a clue there as to why we're called Five9s in the uptime and SLA, and that comes with a lot of the experience you learn from trial and error over the last 20 years in this industry. So enough about this slide. I do want to get into rather an abrupt statement, change, deal with it. And this can be taken psychologically across our whole lives. Change is the inevitable constant, whether we like it or not. Hence the reason why it's a pretty brutal statement, and we have to deal with it. And it's not just us that have to deal with it. A lot of the panel, I love the panel today, by the way, because they nailed a lot of points. And one of the points is that we have to accommodate for Gen Z, Y, Z, and all of the consumers. And they are a highly expectant generation that's coming on, and so that has to be dealt with. And that change has to be brought in via technology, because a lot of these guys are used to using it in their personal lives. They use Siri on their iPhone or Alexa, and they're demanding that it's used in their consumer experience in life. So the changes are, as vendors, we, as well as Five9, who are seen as cloud and feature rich, because we were the new boys in town, but what we saw recently with AI is we too could get complacent if we're not careful and change and adapt. I know this is a really strange slide, so I'm going to talk through each quadrant based on what I just said. Our industry contact center, there's a little bit of a story here. It began with the premise and the legacy world. I'm not going to mention some of the brands because they're still around. They might even be in this room. But essentially that was tin, that was on-premise, on-site. You wanted a 1,000-seat contact center, you'd have the data centers and the actual metal footprint in the office. And so even if it was a 1,000-seat contact center for a retailer that only had 1,000 advisors or agents during Christmas, and by February they were down to about 300, well, the enterprise has to deal with that floating ship. That's what the analogy is there. It's tin, it's there, it's floating, and I have to pay maintenance, I have to pay subscription and continue maintaining that. And so that's why the analogy of, I think that's the Queen Mary, I'm not sure. My marketing team told me off because I did put the Titanic initially. They've changed it wisely. But essentially that's the tin analogy. That's the premise. And some of these guys, these vendors, I won't mention them, fell asleep at the wheel and they saw this thing coming called cloud and they thought, well, that's a fad. That's a buzz. It's not going to have much of an impact. But actually, as we now know, it revolutionized our industry. In fact, here in the UK, depending on which analyst you ask, there's IDC, Oru in the room, they'll say it's between 30 to 45% has now penetrated and is cloud in the UK. And by the way, our nation has the most contact center seats across the whole of Europe. There's 6 million contact center seats in Europe, and 33% of that is here in the UK. And of that subset, if you like, what I'm trying to say is 40% is now cloud. And that's why the next image is that plane, because cloud is actually an entirely different technology. It's built on microservices. What we have is multi-tenant data centers. You can have feature-rich, future-proof technology on. And the data proves that that's a wholly different technology, hence why we've gone from a nautical analogy to one of more an aeroplane. And so this is what I'm now going to talk about, the AI revolution. In fact, I'm going to be honest enough to say, for us, it really had an impact on our share price. And AI was a disruptor. It still is, to a degree. Because what happened was every morning I'd wake up and there was abc.ai saying that they can do everything a contact center vendor can do and more. And unfortunately what has happened is it's proved itself not to be as true. So is it going to revolutionize? Probably not, because it's built on the same cloud platform. But is it going to radically change? Absolutely. And I'm going to show that it's actually changing already. So the AI analogy there is the Concorde, and sadly, as we all know, have they put the fire? That was meant to remove the fire, but we all know that Concorde was taken out. It was taken out because there was an accident. And the analogy I'd like to use here is, how many are familiar with Klarna? Klarna with a K, right? You purchase something online and Klarna comes along and you've got ways of paying it installment-wise. Klarna's CEO famously 9 months ago came out and said, he bought into this whole AI apocalypse. Robots are going to take over the entire world. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll sack off 80% of my staff and I will bring in AI. Now the media took hold of this, ran with it. It's one of the reasons why the disruption happened in our market. He managed to take 80% of his staff away. But if we look back today now, on the back of the data, well, it's there for public consumption. Their CSAT, customer satisfaction score, nosedived. It nosedived various degrees, to the point where their consumers are saying, we're just not happy. So the question is, he went too fast at the risk of losing his very customer base. So that's the analogy of the Concorde. And I want to say here that, I mean, it's public knowledge with us. We're a public listed company, NASDAQ. Wall Street were very unkind to us during this process. I mean, it was brilliant during the pandemic, by the way. Who remembers a time when cloud, this was the secular tailwind we were all waiting for. For 10 years, I've been lobbying cloud as evangelist. No one wanted to buy it. They said, what are you talking about, remote working from home? I don't need that. Along comes this thing called Corona COVID, and everyone wants to work from home. And they're knocking on our doors. And Zoom, as I said earlier, became a verb, which is a utopia of marketing. Five9, our share price flew off into $203, and we were back to back on calls, catering for this wave. And then since then, as I said, there's been this disruption. Were we worth $203 in peak pandemic? Probably not. It's a multiple of 12 for those of you who are aware of finances. Are we worth our share price now? Probably not, because this disruption has come in. But what we're now seeing, as Zoom and Laura just articulated, is AI plus CX is the way forward. That's where we're going. Now, a lot of the panel did associate with the fact that it's a fad and a buzzword to a degree. But I think what we need to do, and I mean here in this room, is educate the market into actual use cases that they can utilize and not just turn up and throw up with features. Because otherwise you'll end up talking about NLPs and LLPs and machine learning and robot process automation. But how does this actually work in the contact center? That's what our job is to do, to educate the market, talking in the language of use cases. So the analogy I've used here, I don't know if you guys know this, but SST is the supersonic travel. It's coming back in 2025. There are two firms that are kind of come back in 2025 with domestic or civilian use that'll take us from London to New York in 3 hours again. But it's a combination. So I want to answer that point today. I know it's probably belaboring this slide, but it's something that really has disrupted our market, so it needs to be addressed. And the analogy of the plane is actually perfect. Our CEO and our investors have grabbed this analogy as we educate the analysts in the market. In a plane, that pilot or the air hostess, humans, are not going to be replaced. You're always going to need a human element to that. And I certainly am not ready to jump on a plane that is being flown by a bot. Would you agree? Not everyone, but okay, you're less risk averse than me. I certainly will not get on a plane that has an AI bot as a pilot, or the air host. So think of the contact center as the fuselage of the plane. The humans are always going to be required. AI, by the way, is a fantastic new turbine engine. That's what it is. It's not a revolution like cloud is, but it's an engine that's going to propel us certainly into what I hope will be finally the utopia of the CX industry. I actually get my call addressed the first time. I get it done. Right? And that's what we've all been trying to do. And by the way, those kind of metrics are still very relevant in our industry. Average handle time, first call resolution. Those things are what the consumer really wants. We don't have a stop clock here, but Jonathan, am I right in the fact that it's 3 o'clock cut? Janet? Yep. Okay, good. I'll move on to the next slide. I do want to do Q&A. I've got our principal solution consultant here. I want to talk through some of the trends we're seeing here. As I've mentioned, the increased adoption of AI and automation. I do want to seed what one of the panelists said here is some of that stuff has been there, by the way. It's now labeled as AI. So some of it is buzzwords, but others isn't. There is cutting edge technology. And why was Wall Street so unkind to Five9? Well, they said of all the vendors who we thought would get it right and tell the story, it was Five9. We purchased a company called Inference 4 years ago. Having seen that, what's that coming over the hill? Is it a monster? No, it turns out to be AI. We saw it coming 4 years ago, acquired the company, bled the product lines in, 8 different product lines, but we just didn't tell the story. We didn't speak in use cases. So Wall Street was punishing us and their task for us is now go out there, tell the stories of real life cases. And we've got some fantastic data points I can share with you. The likes of Gartner are saying by 2026, $80 billion of savings will be had by AI and automation. You've got McKinsey saying 30% of agent tasks can be automated. And they're talking about 2025. By the end of 2025, 30% of agent tasks will be automated. Does that mean humans are redundant? Not so. I want us to think like this. Those high volume calls, low value, but high volume calls, perfect for AI. You don't have to apologize. It's fine. They're perfect. Why? Because they're repetitive. They're monotonous. And for humans, if we're going to fess up here, high human error in monotonous, repetitive task. It's your, I don't know, you've booked a restaurant and you want to have this parking locally, right? That's a little quick self-service. That's not needed for a human really to interact with you. Could be your counsel. You want to remember, if you're like me, I forget whether it's recycling or the other bin, right? You just want to remember what it is. It's a self-service. It's a quick first line interaction that doesn't require a human. That's high volume, by the way, but low value. You can get self-service to do that. You can have interactive virtual agent or a bot, and the acronyms just continue. But the high value calls, low volume, but the high value calls, humans are perfect for. What do I mean by that? I mean, it could be, Jonathan, what car are you driving now, by the way? A Volvo, like me, an XC90, and I want to call Volvo contact center because I need action now. I'm on the roadside and I need someone to speak to now. And if I get a bad experience there, I'm likely to choose another brand next time. That's what you're dealing with, by the way. You're dealing with a consumer generation, I include myself in this, who has high choice. With high choice comes a spoilt mentality. Well, I didn't enjoy my Marriott experience. I'm going to go Radisson next time. Oh, I didn't enjoy X, Y, Z, and the consumer choice is there. Match that with the technology, and you're suddenly dealing with, well, what it's done is made our industry the critical component for whether a brand exists today or not tomorrow. That's how key the contact center is. It's the front door for the enterprise, and it's no longer just a cost center. I was discussing with Oru over there. This can now be a profit center. The call center can now be a profit center. We acquired a company called Acquion, just to give an example. And that's an AI dialer. And I'm going to come on to a bit use cases, how that's helping brands right now. So that's the AI and the automation part. The other phrase here is Jason coined a wonderful phrase, contextual continuation. There's another hashtag here for you. Remember multi-channel and omni-channel? Well, we want to say, it's so cheesy, I can't even say it. Opti-channel. Ah, said so. Optimal in which way? Optimal for the generation? Depends, right? I mean, I know a group of youngsters who'd rather get whacked in the head than receive a call or do a call. They want a WhatsApp or they want a Twitch. I don't know if that's... That sounded weird saying that. Instagram, Snapchat, whatever medium it is, it has to be optimal for the genre or the generation. I can't keep up. Is it X? I'm X, I know that. I know there's Y, there's Z, and is it Gen Alpha next? They have different needs and they want all of the channels catered for that. They get to choose. They're highly demanding. It's also optimal for where you are. You're in the back of a bus. Do you want to make a call to Boots about that rash on your neck? Probably not. In the back of a theatre and university, you want to be texting. And that journey we heard about all the way through today is wonderful because I can choose based on my optimal location, my optimal generation, and as vendors, we have to cater for it all. Now, I'm not going to drain this slide because this slide is available if you want to talk about the trends, these are the trends we are seeing as a supplier. So, what has Five9 done to deal with this? And what are we going to do now, having been so frustrated by the fact that we have many consumers, our customers using AI? Well, last week we actually had our CX Summit. Some of you guys were here in Barcelona and we launched Genius AI. Yes, it's a little play on the fact that Salesforce is Einstein. But every other ISV or partner has their own AI. We're now just saying what we've always had for the last 4 years and using it to talk about the 4 flows here of our AI. There's contextual data, as Jason mentioned, but the 4 flows here: listen, analyze, apply, and tailor. I'm not going to drain this because if you want to see a demo of that, we can arrange for it. But there are 8 product lines. Has the core functionality of the contact center gone away? Absolutely not. When we did a survey, we found that actually voice is still king. Or queen, sorry if there's a politically correct brigade here. Voice is king or queen. It's still the highest channel where people want to call into. So the core contact center is necessary. But what we're finding now is people aren't just happy to move from premise to cloud and just copy and paste their functionality, what they had before. Well, why move then? They do expect cutting edge technology. They want future-proof cutting edge technology. And Genius AI does deliver that. And it's important that we talk about that through our product lines, but more important is to talk about that using use cases. I mean, this is the point, if I can't hammer it home enough, it's the point I really want to hammer home, and then I'll open up for Q&A on what we're seeing and so on and so forth. But so, everyone here recognize this brand? Okay, so this brand is, well, I didn't know this, but they also own Sexy Fish and Bill's, if you ever have breakfast at Bill's. Annabelle's the private membership club. And what we had to do first with them I think it was another gentleman here, was it Ross at one of your customers, Trailblazers? He said the strength that Britannic had, and I love that point, is they listened. It's such an underrated skill today to actually sit back and listen to the business's needs and therefore address the pains relevantly. And so that's what we did with the Ivy Group. Their CTO, John Davis, is now a brand evangelist of ours. And one of the first things he said, let's do this phase by phase. The first thing I want to do is I do want my CRM tool to actually integrate with the content, actually do that. Not just threaten to do that, have a deep CTI level integration. They happen to use Salesforce, but one thing we've remained agnostic on is CRM. Because, well, the customer decides that. It could be Oracle, it could be SAP, it could be Freshworks. I wake up every day, it could be Sugar.crm. There's different brands. So we've stayed agnostic there. We've also stayed agnostic with the UC. And there's a reason for that. Now Zoom are in the room, so I've got to stay we're audited, we're public listed. Eric Yuan put 14 billion reasons down why we should be part of Zoom mid-pandemic. What we realize there is that's a great, and by the way, 14 billion reasons is very tempting, especially for very senior level management. But the rest of us were like, hang on a minute, we're the go-to-market team here for the next 5-10 years. And we rather prophetically said, you know what? We believe there's another vendor called Microsoft who will probably take the lion's share of the UC market in Europe. There's a few nodding heads there who know that 80% of Europe is Teams. We don't govern that. Five9 want to stay in our lane. What are we good at? AI and CX, or CX and AI. We want to stay there. We just want to ensure the agnostic element of it is CRM. In this case, Salesforce solved massive problems for him. Now, the second part of what he really needed, it turns out at the Ivy, one of their biggest, I asked him, who's your biggest competitor? And I was picturing, the Ivy and the Mayfair. Anyone fancy a guess of who their biggest competitor would be, the Ivy restaurant chain?
Cooking at home.
Cooking at... You've heard me say this before, John. That's cheating. Someone whispered KFC, which I found even more entertaining. You clearly don't like the Ivy.
I think that's box.
You're right. You haven't heard this one, so well done. He said to me, it's Netflix and chill. That's my biggest competitor. Oh, what does that even mean? Over my head. And I know there's a nefarious element to that phrase. Let's not go there. There's definitely some Tinder users here. Look, Netflix and chill is my biggest competitor. It's just easier to do. They can stay at home. They can order their food. What they want is getting pretty good, by the way. My generation was Chinese and pizza. That's all you could telephone and call in. You can now order what you want. And he said, so what are you going to do about it, John? I asked him, and he said, well, I need to provide white glove service. I need VIP. I need them to be able to use an interactive virtual agent, TJ, and almost call in 6 tables at the Ivy Garden in Mayfair or the city and have it done and ready with their names done on it. And I want to make it as easy as possible, especially for my VIP customers. In fact, Annabelle Members Club, by the way, has, A and B list, or most of the B lists are on I'm a Celebrity right now, but A-list celebrities there, politicians attending the Members Club. And he's saying, we want to give that VIP service to them. So he said, that's my biggest pain. So with AI, but it's that interactive virtual agent. It's the company we acquired 5 years ago called Inference, but today, known as Five9 IVA. And in fact, one of our competitors, they're here, 8x8, still are on our list of top spenders with us. Because the product was so good, they continued to use it. Well, they certainly have to maintain the base they did. It's that good, this product. And John's using it today in the Ivy to cater for his VIP. And here comes the next problem. And again, I wasn't aware of this, but I said, so what is one of your challenges? What is one of the biggest pains that keeps you up at night as a top restaurateur? He said, well, even though people use OpenTable and other things to book and reserve, and even though we ask them for a deposit, what can happen inevitably is cancellations. And Thomas, look, these cancellations, I can put a money point on it. Now, they're talking about £150 a head at some of these Ivies. So if a table for 10 disappears overnight and is not coming, then they can put an ROI immediately on how do we fill those seats? How do we get those bums on those seats quicker? Now with Acquion and the AI element of Dialer, you suddenly have, yes, there are GDPR issues, but there's a whole wealth of database of people to call and offer them a table perhaps at a discount if they come in at short notice. And suddenly that dialer functionality also is key. So these are some of the actual use cases being used now. And I want to summarize and close off and leave 5 minutes for Q&A by just summarizing, well, what is this hype and the radical change that AI is today, certainly for our customer base, bringing to the contact center. And it's the A to Z of the use cases. As mentioned earlier, I want to hammer the point home. It's the AI insight within our portfolio, is what we're calling it, that augments the agent's experience. So before the call even comes, the AI has every analytical piece of data, not just the CRM, that even could predict what that call is about, but doesn't stop there. would anecdotally give an advice on what to say if that person says this. And if they don't say this, then say this. It's empowering the agent. Well, someone said they're called advisors now. You can't keep up nowadays. The advisor, insight, so that insightful call takes place. So AI can do that from A to Z. Now Z I'm coming on to, and I've probably given it away here. Jonathan's allowed to answer again here because he thinks out of the box. We surveyed all our agents. And we asked them, what is your biggest pain? We're talking contact center agents. And again, I think it was either Ross or might have been Chris who said they're fresh out of uni generally, and they found themselves at a desk with an earphone or a headphone on. What do you think was their biggest pain they hate most? One of the reasons they don't like getting up on Monday even. Anyone want to have a guess of that? I need some water while you guess. No guesses? I promise I won't. You guys probably know what it is, right? Rude. Are you rude on calls?
No. Repetitiveness of the job?
Aggressive, rude, repetitive. This is good. Now the juices are flowing. What's that? Not knowing what to do. That was top 3. And in fact, I didn't know this, but one of the biggest fears in life is glossophobia, this fear of public speaking. So not knowing what to do next to someone else is up there, and it was up there on their top 5. Number 1 by far, I thought it would be what you guys said, rude, aggressive. All I hear 8 hours a day is complaints, and some of them sprinkled with profanities, and I get sworn at, and it's a horrible job. I thought that would be what they would say. It actually wasn't. It was, look, we can deal with that. In fact, we signed up for that. That was in the T's and C's. I knew that because I was one of those people as well. What they find most, almost akin to rubbing salt in the wound of said interaction, was that at the end of all of it, they have to sit there and type up the wrap-up. Type it up and get it accurate. So we're calling that AI summary. Because here's the thing about generative AI. It can listen in ChatGPT. And it can actually have the call transcript done for you, where the agent, suddenly it just has to just approve it and move on to the next call. And for you all wise sage CX industry veterans here, you will know that that immediately increases average handle time because they're on to the next call a heck of a lot quicker. But actually more important than that, and a favorite subject of mine, is mental health. Mental health is very high on a lot of people's radar, and so it should be. I know it's on yours as well, Jonathan, from a philanthropic point of view. It should be. We are more than ever attacked in our senses by so many things. And, well, guess what? Particularly in the pandemic, by the way, they had to go home. This job, this thankless job sometimes of being sworn at by consumers, you're now at home. You don't even have a peer next to you to rub off and sorry, what I meant was bounce off of. I don't know where we're going with this. That wasn't a transcript. Bounce off and sort of say, did you have that bad? No, you're alone. And we found that their mental health just went downhill. That's a big problem. And so there's 2 ways we can tackle that. This definitely does, the summary. They don't have to type it up anymore. But another thing we're now seeing that I lobbied hard for 4 years ago, but today, brands, I can't mention the UK's largest insurance company, the world's largest logistic company, some of the biggest sports brand retailers, manufacturers, vertical agnostic, are picking up on this thing called gamification. Because yes, there are remote workers now. Some of them haven't gone back, by the way. A lot of them kind of sold their real estate, and 50% of them are still at home, and they want to keep a customer, or the agent rather, engaged. And here's rule 101 of CX. Again, a point mentioned today. Rule 101 of humanity is a happy agent is going to give good customer service. So sometimes there's a habit of turning up and talking about features and how is the agent feeling about their job or on that day, and the mood in that given moment is fundamental to how they interact with a consumer. What gamification does, by the way, is actually brings the whole video gaming world into the contact center, a $90 billion industry in its own right. One of the largest YouTubers is a guy called PewDiePie with 80 million subscribers. It's gaming. And this generation, fresh out of uni, love it. Because previously, they were told, right, put your iPhone away, get your earphones on and get sworn at for 8 hours. Now suddenly, they've got a screen with their own avatar that looks a little bit like them, and they're collecting e-coins as they go along on their day. And those e-coins mean prizes, points mean prizes. Never thought I'd quote Bruce Forsyth, but there you go. What do you think? We're talking about Apple phones, iPhones, holidays. What do you think was the top prize that they're claiming with their e-coins?
Time off.
Time off. It's time off. And what we found is that they are actually, look, there's an AI element to it. They're going home and doing e-learning modules on the product they're doing customer service for to collect e-coins to have Fridays off. And they're seeing the ROI and the engagement level within the contact center rapidly change. Look, guys, time has beaten me. I think there's 5 minutes left. It's too much shine on. What time do we have? We've got 5 minutes. Does anybody have any questions? I can ask Jace to help me out with the questions if it's too technical. But if there's any business-related questions or questions, thoughts you want to share? I love the fact that Britannic has made this a very engaging domain. Any thoughts or questions? No? Well, look, all that remains to be said then is if you guys want to hear more about who our customers are and how they're using AI today, then please do visit our stand and our team will be more than happy to talk you through it. I really appreciate your time today and I'll see you around upstairs. Thank you.